There was one very skinny little fellow who could hit harder and faster than I could. I don't remember, well, it doesn't matter what his name was because he never came to anything in life. But I went on from there. I went on to the Badlands of the Dakota Territory to try the life of the cowboy. The Badlands. Have any of you been there? Have you? My dear, what did you think of it?
I loved it.
You loved it. I did too. Wonderful. It was, would you agree with me that it was beautiful without being pretty? Grimly beautiful. I used to say that it looked like Edgar Allan Poe sounds. I saved this one for the last. He is the largest and by far the worst of my children. Mrs. Theodore Roosevelt. Mrs. Theodore Roosevelt. For some reason, which escapes me entirely, Edith is not fond of this photograph. I do not know why. I call it the goddess picture. But Mrs. Theodore Roosevelt is, I must say, a great deal nearer to my idea of perfection than I am myself, which she frequently finds occasion to remind me of. Another thing that Edith frequently finds occasion to remind me of is my rather lukewarm support in my political career of women's suffrage, and I wish to say a word or two about that. I admit it. I was a supporter, but I will admit, a lukewarm supporter of women's suffrage until I made the acquaintance of women of real and powerful character. Women, if I may appropriate Mark Twain's famous remark about Joan of Arc and Martin Luther, women with souls of asbestos. Women who are able to walk through the fires without being scorched. Women like Jane Addams and Helen Cady Stanton. And then I began to agree more and more with Alexis de Tocqueville, who said all those years ago that the most remarkable thing about America was the quality of her women. I began at the outset this evening by saying that the strength of a nation is based upon the bedrock of the family, and the woman is the bedrock of the family. I believe that the birth pangs have made all men the debtors of all women, and that man has fallen very low indeed who does not recognize something sacred in the names of wife and mother. I believe that no man, not even the soldier who has done his duty in battle, stands on quite the same level as the woman, the wife, and the mother who has done her duty for her family. And by the way, I have mighty little use for the man who is always declaiming in favor of an 8-hour workday for himself but does not mind his 16-hour workday for his wife. So there, how's that for preaching? Oh yes, when we left off, we were charging up San Juan Heights. Charge! I am very proud of that. I will have you know that that is the shortest political speech in American history. Do what you can with what you've got, where you are. Best lesson I ever learned. When I was police commissioner in New York City, we received a telegram from Germany informing us that a man by the name of Rector Althart was coming to preach in New York City. What this man may have been a rector of, if anything, I do not know. But everyone knew why he was coming to New York. He was an anti-Semite, a professional Jew-hater. And all over Europe, he preached what he called sermons against the Jewish people. He preached that the Jews had murdered Jesus Christ. He preached that the Jews drank the blood of Christian babies. People believe this sort of nonsense. And so the Jewish leaders came to me because I was police commissioner, and they demanded that I prevent this man from speaking. I declared that I could not do that, and indeed I would not. In the United States of America, a man must, unless a man actually incites to riot, he must be allowed to speak his mind, no matter how loathsome his opinions may be. And these gentlemen left. You can imagine 11 rabbis leaving the room in a condition of low dudgeon, a very depressing spectacle. And I sat and thought, what could I do? And it came to me. I called in a young officer, Otto Raphael. I'd recruited him for the force myself. Wonderful young officer. And I said, look, Otto, how many Jewish police officers do you suppose we have on the force altogether? And he said, probably not very many, 30 or 40 perhaps. I said, that's enough. Get them together. I've got an assignment for them. 3 mornings later, there they were on the parade grounds, dressed uniforms, splendid-looking bunch of young men. I called them the Maccabees. And my friends, I cannot tell you what a delight it is to speak to a bunch of people who have read their Bible. It is quite wonderful. I thank you for that. Yes, I call these young men the Maccabees after Judah Maccabee, the great Jewish warrior who threw the remnants of Alexander the Great's empire out of Palestine in 154 BC, for those of you who haven't read your Bible. And I gave them, these young men, their assignment. I made them bodyguard to this man Alcott when he was to arrive in New York City. And I did one other thing. I wrote letters to the newspapers. At that time, there were 11 daily newspapers in New York City. I wrote them all letters explaining what I had done, and within 3 days there was an article in every single newspaper in New York City about how this loathsome and disgusting man was going to be allowed to preach his poisonous evangel against the Jewish people, and he would be allowed to do so in perfect safety because he would be bodyguarded by a special detachment of 40 of New York City's finest police officers, handpicked by the commissioner himself, and every one of them a Jew. And he quickly became a laughingstock and went back where he came from. You do what you can with what you've got where you are. Best lesson I ever learned. It has always been that way with my father. I've been able to hear when I was president and I had a terribly difficult decision to make and did not know what to do. I had only to think, what would my father do? And I can hear his voice, just as I can hear the sound of his heels on the floor. He taught me, I believe, all the really great lessons of life before I was 10 years of age. And the greatest of all of these is this: there is not one among us who does not at some time need a hand to be reached out to him. And therefore, shame on us. Shame indeed, if we are not willing to reach out our hand to our brother in his hour of need. He was the best man I ever knew. Trees 300 feet high, 3,000 years old. Those trees were old when Julius Caesar walked on earth. I camped out among those trees with John Muir, the great naturalist. We lay in our sleeping bags and gazed up at the winter stars through the canopy of those trees, and I can tell you that no cathedral ever conceived in the passion of the Middle Ages is as great and as grand a testament to God's grace as those mighty trees. They said you can't do that. There's no law that gives you the right to create simply by declaration a national park. I said there is a law, the Newlands Reclamation Act of 1902, that allows me to create a presidential bird sanctuary. Is there not? They said, well, yes, there is. I said, I hereby declare that the floor of the Grand Canyon is a presidential bird sanctuary. There is a law, the Antiquities Act of 1907, which will allow me to declare a presidential monument. Is there not? They said, well, I suppose that. I said, I hereby declare the walls of the Grand Canyon a presidential monument. Next case. You do what you can with what you've got where you are. I hope you will permit me to presume upon the privilege of my age, and in the 1 minute that I have left to speak to you, preach to you just a little about the future. For my friends, I am gone. My entire generation is gone. If you wish to meet me, you must read a history book. And you, my friends, you are the generation of the here and the now. But there is the future, your children, and their children, and their children, and theirs. Therefore, go to your children and tell them this for me. Love life, do your duty, God bless you.